Interesting to note is that historically,
The developer will provide certain services to the building manager to enable rebuilding.
so in Saudi Arabia, title can be held by way of ownership. It's known as mulkiya. And that's absolute ownership, similar to a number of rights to real estate exist in Saudi Arabia, the primary right of which is known as absolute ownership. The ability to hold title in Saudi Arabia can be recorded in a number of ways. So in Saudi Arabia, you can own your land, absolute ownership, known as mulkiya, and that's similar in nature to freehold title in other jurisdictions. So absolute ownership, freehold title exists in Saudi Arabia, and it's known as an ownership right to land, which is capable of inheritance, it passes, it's in perpetuity. There is also a right of lease. So a leasehold right, a right of lease similar to leases in other jurisdictions, it's known as ijara, and it exists for a finite period of time, and it has a certain series of rights that are ascribed to a tenant under a lease. Now in Saudi Arabia, in order for a lease to now be enforceable, it must be registered on the Ijara platform. Leases that exceed a particular duration are also subject to tax because they amount to a transfer of title. If they're below that particular duration, then they're not subject to a real estate transfer tax. Concept of usufruct also exists in Saudi Arabia. It's known as manfa or intifa, and it gives you the same bundle of rights of ownership, but for a limited duration of time. It's documented in the same form as a lease, as an ijara, or to be capable of registration in order to be enforceable. We have other types of rights in Saudi Arabia that have derived through Sharia over time, but these are the three primary categories of ownership. Interest in real estate. All interests in real estate in Saudi Arabia are rights in rem. So if you look at the common law language of rights in rem, they run, meaning this interest runs with title. The interest in a lease runs with the title to the land. So if the owner of the land sells the land, it's encumbered by that lease. And that lease continues when the ownership passes to a new purchaser. Under the new in-kind land registration law, it's also now possible to register encumbrances against interests that one holds in property. We're yet to see that registration taking place at the registry itself, but the mechanism exists under the law, and mortgages can be registered. Now, mortgages are being registered against ownership to real estate, but the mechanism exists in the law to register that mortgage and encumber a leasehold interest and a usufruct interest as well. Again, we've yet to see that mechanism implemented, but we expect that will happen very soon. And other types of encumbrances, covenants, easement rights, are again all theoretically possible under the law. They were theoretically possible under Sharia previously, and we have seen examples of encumbrances on title, and we expect to see encumbrances beginning to emerge and become more common as a real estate registry is implemented centrally across the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.